Welcome to Software Leaders Uncensored with Steve Taplin. Welcome to Software Leaders Uncensored, where tech leaders drop the filters and just tell it like it is. I'm your host, Steve Taplin, serial tech entrepreneur with 30 companies under my belt. I failed at 20 of them, and I scaled 10 of those to success. And I took that wild ride and journey and put it into my latest book, Fail Hard, Win Big. And this is how I talk about my lifetime entrepreneurial batting average of 333. If I was a baseball player, I guess that would get me in the Hall of Fame. And I talk about how using failure to propel your successes and the power of building custom software and what that does for companies. Now I'm the CEO of Sonatify Technology. We build high-impact software, partnering with corporate engineering teams to help them accelerate. And today we have Chris Chapman out of Atlanta, Georgia. Chris has been an engineer, a consultant, an architect, a multi-time CTO. We're going to have some fun today. Chris, welcome.
Hey, nice to be here. Glad to be on the podcast.
Awesome. Chris, if you would give our listeners a couple-minute overview of your roller coaster and the journey of your career.
Yeah, I've been in tech forever. Was as obsessed with it from a wee age. Computer science and all that by nature, which it sounds like pretty straight path, but ended up being like an enterprise software developer. Java, big back in the day when EJB ruled the earth and everybody was trying to build ERPs everywhere for everything. I kind of did that. Sort of was a software gun for hire, bounced around a lot, but cut my teeth on a lot of like big practice, big team type stuff, and quickly realized that I had an interest and a knack for breaking things and being sort of addicted to startups, which led me down a path of
I can understand that.
the smaller company. I always thought the big tech was the great thing, and you do get exposed to interesting stuff, but I kind of have a propensity to want to dive in and control and touch everything. And it seems to be a better place than startup land for me. So started going down the rabbit hole in a bunch of startups. Kind of you alluded to in your preamble there. I think many of my startups didn't quite start up, but I learned a ton, and I got to do everything from, my normal software gravity to actually going into building and operating data centers, building and orchestrating support and operations teams, doing hardware and software engineering, doing front and back of house, got involved in the business side of things. That led me on and on to creating different wild variety of software stacks. And then over that time, from one startup to the next, I've sort of evolved. And ended up building some patented software, which led me to my current engagement through an acquisition eventually. And now I live as the CTO of a cloud-based company that's oddly focused on Mac software and Mac hardware, which is sort of an interesting niche within cloud itself.
Well, cool. Now, so you're the CTO of Mac Stadium. Give us the overview of what Mac Stadium's doing.
Yeah, Mac Stadium has been around for a little bit, about 14 years. They started as a data center, but like I said, weirdly focused on Apple hardware. So it's the only data center you'll walk in where you just see Apple and not anything else. It kind of fit an oddly specific use case, but I got brought in about 7 years ago for software because much like any data center, in the cloud movement, you want to start orchestrating it and software enabling it and defining it. And we had technology that could make that possible. And so Mac Stadium's really about delivering, Mac at scale as a resource for cloud, for software development, and engineers who use Apple technology, for virtual desktop environments. And now, of course, because it's everywhere, AI. So believe it or not, Apple can be used for AI, not just on the front end, but on the back end. Really trying to drive the technology innovation around how to operationalize Mac at scale in the enterprise.
Okay. I've been around data centers my whole career. And it's funny when things switch to the cloud, non-technical people were like, oh my gosh, the cloud. And I'd be like, you realize that's just somebody else's data center. It just means it's not yours.
It's a room you can't touch to turn your machine off anymore.
That's right. Is that common, kind of a Mac, Apple only data center?
Very, very uncommon, to be quite honest. I think Mac Stadium was one of the first to sort of foray into that category, and it was a bit on accident. It spun out of a traditional data center, but a group that was doing sort of the alt hosting where there was like a really obscure custom Linux box, or some people wanted a Mac for like, I don't know, some sort of creative use or whatever. But spun into a thing when they sort of figured out the primary use case that Apple demanded build be done on Apple hardware. And then when you take that into an enterprise setting, big enterprise teams trying to all use little things cobbled under their desk is not best practice, obviously. So that drove the sort of need for the business. And then as time evolved and as things have gone on, it's been how do you turn something that's fundamentally a desktop computer into a data center class asset, and then beyond that, how do you turn that into cloud, which is software driven, software defined, scalable, flexible. And then really, what are the use cases for Apple in the enterprise? Because again, coming from a desktop computer and a creative tool, and then eventually a developer tool, but now we're really seeing Apple push hard into the enterprise world more than ever, because everybody's grown up with them and dragged them in the office and started to realize you can use them for everything, and silicon's super powerful. So it's becoming okay, if I can use this in enterprise, how? And how do you operationalize it? And how do you software wrap it? And how do you make it a business class asset?
Well, and many developers and engineers prefer to develop on Macs as opposed to PCs. How does that play into the infrastructure you guys have?
Yeah, it well, the Unix core is again something that everybody's loved. It's got all the command line tools, and it's got all that, so very API centric. I think probably 5-10 years ago, Apple was an interesting world where it was either somebody who wanted it because it was pretty and it was easy, or it was like a hardcore guy that just knew you could get to the terminal right away and didn't have to add PuTTY and 6 other tools to your stack to get something done. It was just built in. Now it's kind of all bled together, but from a development perspective, Apple's still sort of closed garden in that if you build something for the platform, it has to be built on the platform, signed on the platform, delivered on the platform, which great for our business, drives our business, but makes it complex for companies who really want to create that scalable architecture, because then you go hand a DevOps engineer a stack of Mac minis and say, good luck. And he screams, because that is not data center. That is not where are my mesh of GPUs? Where's my blade chassis? Where's my storage? What the heck's going on here? So, that drives a lot of what we do on the cloud side. And then, like I said, I think we're learning more as we get into hybrid situations and AI and all these other cases where compute is everywhere. There's really not a good wrapper around how to operationalize Mac as an enterprise resource, not just for developers, but for the business users that might rely on it. Like if you start to put VDI or AI or anything else on it, and the business is relying on it as the compute itself, it can't just be under Bob's desk somewhere. It can't. That's
True.
not.
So you mentioned that you had built a patented software, and it sounds like your company was acquired, and that's how you became the CTO of Mac Stadium?
That is correct. So my journey through falling through failure through startups was that an initial company we had was delivering sort of data center based medical software. I took some core concepts out of that and landed at an MSP of all places, and it was literally just IT and break fix and all this. But one of the problems that company was solving was they were trying to address at the time virtualization and cloud for small to mid-sized business, which is people who heard the word cloud, like you said, but don't know what a cloud is, and B, thought they wanted stuff virtualized but couldn't tell you what flavor or what it meant or why they even wanted it. So they had this really small, tightly resource constrained team, and they were running into everything from VMware to Citrix to Zen to all these technologies, and going, how are we going to create a standard business practice of technology to deliver to customers around all this stuff? So I guess because I was not smart enough to say no, got in and said, well, let's see if we can package this up. And then, like
Nice.
most people who are too technology leaning, sometimes I'm like, I bet I could build something that could solve this problem. And so the patented product was a technology called Virtual Command, which was effectively a software wrapper and enabling platform around connecting any sort of backend resource and protocol to any web-based protocol. So I could take physical or virtualization, I could take Mac, Windows, Linux, I could drive it through, pick your protocol and deliver it on a browser anywhere, anytime. And that helped this MSP sort of walk in as the IT expert to business XYZ and go, I will take your rat's nest of a closet and all your cobbled applications wherever they sit, and I will put this clean interface over the top, and you can press a button and you can get all your things wherever you want. And then over time, my IT guys will make the technology decisions while your business guys just keep doing business. So the
Gotcha.
idea was to create that sort of buffer, right? Like I was tired of walking in as the IT guy and going, we want to do this project, but well, we can't move QuickBooks because the boss will, scream and pull his hair out. So this was sort of a buffer. Along the way, we found some really interesting deep technology applications in the way we're trying to sort of shift workloads around and do virtualization. That's what led to the patented part of this stuff. But the business problem was make a buffer for IT guys to get sanity in doing their job and their lift and shift work.
Very cool. So tell us about some current projects you're working on.
Well, with our flagship product at Mac Stadium, which is called Orca, again, that's sort of the virtualization and orchestration technology. It's based on Kubernetes. It takes Apple and it delivers Apple as a Kubernetes resource everywhere. We've been going with that. Historically, we delivered it, like I said, out of Mac Stadium as a software-enabled data center. However, we've really shifted that software to be anywhere, so we can deliver from AWS and now on-premise and kind of on the desktop and all over the place. The idea is to, again, scale it beyond just sort of workload orchestration to full-on Mac operationalization at scale. So having a real platform that you can take a project from beginning, middle to end and deploy all the software and facets of that software.
Well, sounds exciting, and I don't think I've met anyone else working on something similar. And so it sounds like you guys have a great niche, and we know Apple and Mac aren't going anywhere.
No, they are rising. And as a matter of fact, the M4, we talk a lot with Apple, and the M4 kind of rocked everybody last year because it's such a little powerful laptop that can do everything. And they've gotten it down to a price where people are starting to actually legit consider, like, hey, why am I using a cheap little something if I can use this thing for 3 years and it's as powerful as a pro laptop? So
Yes, it actually really pissed me off because all the M3 ones I had, everybody wanted to complain and wanted an M4. So it, I
I
hear you.
know. I'm always trying to time the WWDCs because as much as we work with them, they don't let any cats out of the bag. So you're like, do I buy this one or the next one or yeah.
That's
It's
funny.
always the next version, I think. But yeah.
Well, talk to us about your software engineering team. How many engineers you have? How do you run it? What are you guys remote, hybrid, on site?
Well, we're hybrid, well, primarily remote now, but we do have local office resources. But we've gone through sort of ebbs and flows. Obviously, COVID time, everyone was super remote, but we use a mix of in-house and contract workers. We have about 20 developers, and they do everything. For our stack is a bit deep and wide, so we have a little bit of a segmentation and capability. But I think true of modern developers, it's more everybody has to do a little bit of everything. So, but we have everything from people in Sofia, Bulgaria, to California, to Georgia, where I live. Like we're kind of very widely distributed, and we organize more around sort of product platform capability. So resources in the team tend to organize around particular products versus horizontally across everything. So we don't typically have like the DBA guy. We have more, the guy on Orca or the guy on Portal, that kind of thing.
Gotcha. And you've been involved in a lot of ventures. Have you found the ideal mix of your in-house employee W-2 developers versus your outsourced contract developers? Have you, through your ventures and successes and failures, what have you seen as the ideal mix?
That's a great question. I think it varies and it does depend on the technology and the business at times. I've found a lot in the really early innovation startup-y stage. There's a lot to be said for having some tight core collaborators that just sort of all mind share. But I think you quickly need to figure out how to parse that out and spread that out. And that gets you scale and speed and business agility. And that's when contracting makes a ton of sense. There's also a lot to be said for shifting out key functional pieces. We've at times here done things like a specific driver development or something that's maybe deep and technical, but also not necessarily mainline to what we want to focus on the main product. And that's a really good use case for a tight-knit contracting team that can come in and fully scope it and really drive down on it. And then by the same token, once you get things in sort of a V2 mode where they can start to really spread the work out and iterate over and really mature feature sets, I think that's another place where contractors are excellent. We've also had them come in and a lot of outsourcing companies are exceptionally well versed in tight knit development practices, agile, DevOps, that kind of thing. And
Yes.
startups tend to suck at those things because it's just everybody in a room on a whiteboard going crazy. And then when it's time to productize the software, getting into rigor is not their best skill set.
Well, and once you start bringing in external resources, you have to force process so everyone can work together.
Yeah, yeah, and tool chains and everything, right? Yeah.
Yes. So you have East Coast, West Coast in the US, you have offshore developers in Europe. How do you deal with the time zone challenges?
But yeah, we try to, well, we use a lot of tooling, obviously, things like Slack, things like asynchronous communication. We have Confluence and tooling like that where we can all use sort of common mind share. Jira, we use dev practices. We use a lot of automated CI/CD because we try to eat our own dog food and that we're a CI/CD tool and we also do it. But yeah, and it's a Zoom world we live in, so of course there's plenty of Zooming. From a balance perspective, we try to have at least synchronous check-ins that are as overlapping as possible, which means the West Coast guys getting up at 6 a.m. and the Bulgarians staying up till like late. But we try to have at least one or two touch points every week or two so that people see each other and can communicate. And then, throughout a year cycle, we do try to either from whether it's meeting at a conference or scheduling an event where we all kind of come together, have one or two times where there's an actual physical event just to sort of keep that contact, but largely asynchronously. But that is still important. I think if you send everybody to their corners and they're just a mystery man on the web, the team chemistry doesn't work as well.
So with the uniqueness of your business model and what you guys do, tell us about your tech stack, what you can. I mean, obviously Apple, Mac driven.
Yeah.
Tell us about your tech stack.
It is weird. Like I said, it's a little deep and wide. On one hand, on the Apple tech stack, that's not super strange for Apple. It's, like Swift. There is Golang there if we want to do cross-platform stuff. But and then it's the underlying Mac native libraries. So we work with the hypervisor framework a lot and virtualization technologies that are built into Mac OS. So it's Mac OS and Swift and that kind of thing. The part where it gets weird is then we want to cloudify this stuff and we want to hitch it to like web-based and scaled technology. So we decided to glue it to Kubernetes. At that point, on the other end of the spectrum, we have Kubernetes, we have web front ends that are like Node.js stack and Vercel and all this other stuff on the front. And then we're kind of meshing all of those things in the middle. Again, I have developer resources that can go down as deep as, writing sort of almost Mac OS level driver type technology and Swift, and then people that are sitting up writing sort of operators and resource definitions in a Kubernetes cluster and YAML and doing all the things on that end. So, and not everybody does everything, but we do tend to lean into more full stack versus sort of front end, back end.
Gotcha. Now, are you still hands-on code anymore?
I am light hands-on code. I would not try to swell up and say I am a deep coder right now. Unfortunately, I run around too much, but I do stay technical. I do dig into all the new fun things, but it's more my personal project, so I don't feel like an idiot in a conversation than it is me like committing production code right now.
Well, and I know personally that's what I like to hear from CTOs because it doesn't always make sense to have hands-on code in the business. You got too much stuff to manage, but making sure at least nights, weekends, you have some side projects. You're using the latest AI tools. You're keeping your hands on the keyboard so you can relate with your team better.
Right. I like to make sure I can still read a PR, but beyond that, I'm not going to touch it.
Have you guys been able to integrate any AI coding tools into your processes? Kind of what stage are you guys at with that?
Yeah, so they're sort of multifaceted there. On one side, we're developing with partners technology to do AI on Mac, private, dedicated, corporate focused AI. So it's a bit different from the hyperscalers and that. Our technology stack has actually helped produce and build several of the applications that very large AI companies you may have heard of built with our technology, which I'm proud of. So from that perspective, I feel like we're keeping up on AI. On the coding side, I think it's still a little Wild West. We have a lot of folks trying a variety of tooling to see to what level of proficiency they can use it. Haven't.
It's changing so quickly that if you made windsurf the standard today, There could be a new version of Cursor that comes out next week. I mean, it's hard to stay up.
Oh, I know, and it's Claude and it's Gemini and it's it's this private model and don't do that. And then now it's agentic PRDs and like it just keeps shifting. And I think
Yes,
we're
it
trying to
does.
be exploratory but cautious and productive but not distracting. So we haven't corporate mandated a standard thou shalt use Copilot with whatever, but we do allow the functional use of AI tools as long as it's within reason and sanity checked and we're still sort of running the ship there. So, but we're eager to see the acceleration. And I mean, even as today, I'm seeing things where you really are going to, as a developer, be able to amplify your capability with a sort of a virtual team of people that do all the things. It's getting to where it's good enough to where you can start to trust it to do some things.
Yes. I also think, though, that when you look at the news 6 and 12 months ago versus now, 6 and 12 months ago, it was AI's replacing all software developers. They'll be obsolete. And now it's shifting to, I think, what guys like us always knew. It's a great tool to enhance productivity. But I think in my lifetime, it's not replacing developers, but it is making them a lot more productive on a lot of different fronts.
Yeah, well, to me, it's are we still mixing the sand to make the brick to build the house, or are we going to get to the point where we have some prefab walls that we can slam up and AI is the prefab wall? So it's
That is a phenomenal analogy, putting that together. I like that a lot. I'll tell you where game changers we've seen with AI is number one, the ability to put prototypes together quickly. Companies don't need to spend a couple $100,000 on an MVP anymore to then go test it out. AI has done that certainly with testing, with documentation, and with kind of more routine stuff. We've seen it be huge helps.
Yeah. Oh, and back to your coding question, do I code every day? And as a CTO question, to me, that's the cool part as a CTO, where I'm got an overactive imagination and a lot of tech ideas, and probably way more rusty on the code than I care to admit. But to have tools like this where I can quickly go, see if you can spit me out something like that, and then hand something pseudo useful to a deeper developer who can go, okay, I see where you're going with this, but let's do this. I think that's going to be a huge value driver, and for product people to be able to market test, to be able to go, this is a concept. Is this really the right concept?
So, what are some key things as you rose up as an engineer and an architect and a consultant into the CTO role? How have you migrated to the business functions of being a CTO, primarily explaining what you're doing to non-technical stakeholders, quantifying and justifying your world to CFOs and investors? How have you tackled those challenges when you rise up through the engineering side? Being a CTO is a tough job, period. But that's kind of some of the biggest complaints. How do you attack that?
Yeah, not as gracefully as I probably would have liked. Yeah, no, I think like most technical people early on, I thought if I could communicate the technical idea as clearly as possible, that would get me the win. And I think over bumps and bruises and just getting my face kicked in, eventually I realized you've got to meet the business where the business is. It also teaches you hard lessons about, you can be enamored with your solution and you can be enamored with the tech, but if you can't find the business value and the customer value and the reason behind it and the financial drivers, frankly, you're doing a hobby, not a business, and that's a it's hard to figure out. I think interacting with folks through that journey and figuring out it's not just about the technology or the why, but it's about the how and the what are we doing and those have helped evolve, and just picking up business terminology, sitting in discussions and going, okay, you can build this thing, but if you build a $500,000 solution to solve a $50,000 problem and we make a buck on it, did we really need to do all of this? And why did we, was there a partner? Was there another product? Was it just having these like, frankly, practical conversations and decision making sort of situations that developers who are just tasked with solving a problem don't often think about?
Uh-huh.
It really starts to frame up your business head so that when you start attacking these big problems, you're like, okay, well, what's out there to do it first before we go diving down the research and development rabbit hole to just do this crazy thing. I think that's been a big part of the journey, and then and I again, leaning into communication, leaning into sitting in the office with the CEO and the CFO and the COO and hearing their worldview on what they care about and it being radically different from the worldview of
That's right, because they read something that AI is replacing developers, and so why do you have 20 people on the team?
Yeah. And cost justifier are one of my favorites that I often hear from CFOs is like, you're going to build this software. When's it done? And you're like, oh no. What define done?
That's right. The beauty of software is you're never done.
Right. If we do it right, we shouldn't be done.
So as we're more than halfway through 2025 now, what are the biggest challenges, the things that are keeping you awake at night right now?
Well, we've touched on AI a lot, but it's not AI broadly, but just more the rate of change of it all, and the fact that there's just so much noise in the space, and there's so much churn in the space around every day. There's something different, and every day the whole world's tipping a different direction on its axis.
That's right.
It's trying to digest all of that and sort of clear out the FUD and go, okay, this is the direction. I think that is a big struggle. And just broadly from a business perspective, the markets are still sort of chaotic a little bit. I don't feel like tech's in this just giant swing per se. It's in this kind of waveform, and I'm trying to figure out where the hell all that's going.
And I'm crossing my fingers, but we're on a good trajectory right now. But all there has to do is be some more tough tariff talk, and that's going to go away.
Yeah, it is definitely that. And then just, I think in that too, that brings a lot of sort of, technological business uncertainty. People are trying to figure out what the big bets are, but they're not super confident about leaning one way or the other. And from a tech business perspective, that makes customers hold out on projects or, delay on migrations or, consider three different, I think it stretches things out. So it's not bad. It's just sort of a churny kind of time, it feels like.
It is. Hopefully, the good news behind that is there's going to be so much work coming in the future that we're all not going to know what to do, which in our world is a good problem.
That's right. An extra vacation with our AI overlords doing half of our job. It'll be great.
That's right. So, Chris, you've been around a lot of ventures. You've seen great successes and failures. What's one piece of advice you wish you can go back and tell your younger self to do differently?
That's a great question. Don't believe your own tech hype. I think early on, and especially in startups, and you could probably appreciate this, I got so strongly convicted with the technology idea that I created that I wasn't willing to let the business practicality kind of creep its way in and see. And again, not that the technology was wrong or bad or not great, but was there a real business built around it that could succeed? Or was I just plowing ahead to plow ahead? And could I put the bunny down or could I not put the bunny down? And I have been more than guilty of not putting the bunny down at the right time, and probably caused myself a lot of suffering in a tech business where, I went too long, or we should have pivoted, or we should have one of the three startups ago, I literally ran that one into bankruptcy. So, that's a little too aggressive. So
Chris, thanks so much for getting uncensored with us today. This was a fun discussion. You're a fun guy to talk to. You clearly know what you're talking about, and I love it that you've got the bruises and you're succeeding and kicking butt out there. Thanks. Before we wrap, drop one final truth bomb or bit of advice to other tech leaders out there who are either trying to build, scale, or just survive right now.
Great. I would say be super curious, always be trying to be scrappy and find the next thing. To me, developers, development teams, CTOs, people like us that are wanting to do that, it's not about the traditional path as much as it is finding people who are just always willing to sort of pick at the scab and find the next deep thing and drive as hard as they can to get there.
Awesome. Great advice, Chris. Thank you so much. That's it for this episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. I'm Steve Taplin. If you like the show, go ahead and hit subscribe. If you didn't like it, well, Chris and I are going to come kick your butt, and we're going to go tell your competitors about it. Remember to fail hard, win big, and make sure you build what matters. Till next time. That's a wrap. Another great episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. Thank you guys so much for listening. I really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun doing this show. I love talking with great tech leaders. As a side note, if you're interested, check out my new book, Fail Hard, Win Big.
This is the story of how I built 30 companies, failed on 20, and turned 10 into multi-million-dollar wins. The common thread with all of them was custom software. Also, if you need software development help out there, my company, Sonatify Technology, we deliver world-class software development engineers out of Latin America. We have a solid track record of helping companies launch better products and faster. Thanks again for listening. Appreciate it and appreciate you.